بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أبناء الطلاب وزملائي أطباء الدراسات العليا، يسعدني أن أقدم لكم هذه الأفلام التعليمية التي تتناول الجانب العملي لمادة التشريح. فنشاهد الآن هذا الشريط على أمل أن يحقق الفائدة المرجوة منه، مع تمنياتي لكم بالتوفيق. يقول الله تعالى: وقل اعملوا فسيرى الله عملكم ورسوله والمؤمنون. صدق الله العظيم.
This is the anterior wall of the chest, formed by the sternum, ribs, and costal cartilages, and intercostal muscles filling the intercostal spaces. The muscles in each intercostal space are the external intercostal, internal intercostal, and innermost intercostal, from outside to inside. This is the external intercostal muscle. It is the outermost, and its fibers are directed downwards and forwards from its origin in the lower border of the rib above to its insertion into the upper border of the rib below. It is very thin anteriorly, close to the sternum, where it is replaced by a membrane called the external or anterior intercostal membrane. This is the internal intercostal muscle. It is deeper to the external intercostal, and its fibers are directed downwards and backwards. That's to say, making crisscross with the fibers of the external intercostal. This is the innermost intercostal muscle. It is actually the innermost part of the internal intercostal, which is splitted by the intercostal nerve and vessels. This is the intercostal nerve, and those are the posterior intercostal vessels. Just above the nerve, as they run in the costal groove along the lower border of the rib. Here, they pierce the internal intercostal and split it to lie between the internal intercostal and innermost intercostal muscles. This is the parietal pleura lining the chest wall. These are the intercostal nerves and posterior intercostal vessels, close to the vertebral column. They are covered only by parietal pleura. The posterior intercostal arteries, starting from the third, are branches of the descending thoracic aorta. The veins are tributaries of the azygos vein on the right side, but on the left side they are tributaries of the hemiazygos veins. This is the posterior intercostal vein. This is the posterior intercostal artery. This is the intercostal nerve. Each intercostal nerve is attached to a sympathetic ganglion by two rami communicants. This is the thoracic sympathetic trunk, which is formed of ganglia and fibers. is the first thoracic ganglion, which is fused with the inferior cervical sympathetic ganglion to form the cervicothoracic or stellate ganglion in front of the neck of the first rib. Notice its relations to the superior intercostal artery, which is a branch of the costo-cervical trunk of the second part of the subclavian artery, and to the first thoracic nerve, which ascends to join the eighth cervical nerve to form the lower trunk of the brachial plexus. Notice that the artery lies between the sympathetic ganglion medially and the first thoracic nerve laterally. Lower down, the sympathetic chain or trunk gives off three splanchnic nerves, which are called the greater splanchnic, lesser splanchnic, and lowermost splanchnic. This is the cut end of the greater splanchnic nerve, which descends to the abdomen to end in the celiac plexus. The other splanchnic nerves are lower and also enter the abdomen. This is the inner aspect of the anterior chest wall. This is the posterior surface of the sternum, showing muscle attachment to the manubrium. This is the origin of the sternothyroid muscle, and this is the origin of the sternohyoid muscle, which is at a higher level than the sternothyroid. Below and on the back of the xiphoid process, notice the sternal origin of the diaphragm, which is in the form of two slits. This is the internal thoracic artery and vein. These vessels run vertically lateral to the margin of the sternum, from which it is separated by about 1 centimeter. In the upper part of its course, the artery is covered only by parietal pleura, but lower down it is covered by the sternocostalis muscle. At the sixth intercostal space, it ends by dividing into two terminal divisions: the superior epigastric, which descends into the rectus sheath of the abdomen, and the musculophrenic, which runs laterally along the slips of origin of the diaphragm. The internal thoracic artery is a branch of the first part of the subclavian artery. It gives off perforating arteries that perforate the intercostal spaces, and anterior intercostal arteries that anastomose with the posterior intercostal arteries in each intercostal space.